This is your host, Julian, and in this episode, I have a conversation with Gary Haskins once again. In this discussion, we discuss various critical topics that come up on the spiritual journey. We start off by discussing the importance of conversation and how to extract knowledge from conversation, or in other words, knowledge synthesis when relating to another person. We also go into the feminine and masculine polarity, especially in the context of relationships. We also discuss the utility of relationships on the spiritual journey. We go into goals and living in the moment, karma and free will, and the role of seriousness and sincerity on the spiritual journey as well. If you'd like to follow Gary, I've linked his channel in the description. Now, please enjoy this episode of Cusp of Infinity.
It's good to do. Yeah, man. So, divine masculine, feminine, that's good. I was also wanted to touch upon the point of, since you are somewhat experienced in having conversation, especially us together, having long form conversation, the power of that and how it is sort of a psychedelic experience. Like when you're tuned in with somebody, how it can be powerful in that way. So that's something that we could touch upon.
Conversation is, in my opinion, one of the most potent ways of transmission and
Mhm.
synthesizing higher levels of understanding. And I think the proponent of this that I respect the most is Socrates. Never wrote anything down. He just had students and had conversations with people.
Yeah.
And I think he was onto something very fundamental in
Yes.
regards to arriving at higher truth, because when you're in a discussion, you have more opportunity to challenge what's being said immediately. Like when you're reading a book, you're just taking in information and you can't actually
Mm.
challenge the
It's
author,
one
or if
way.
you're watching a video, you can't actually communicate where it is
Yeah.
that you don't fully understand, and you're not even engaging the mental muscles of critical thinking. Like what they're saying may not be how you're interpreting it. So I think
Mhm.
conversation is arguably a necessary way of uh, having the deepest understanding of something, is engaging in that type of a back and forth about a topic.
I agree.
Otherwise, you're just liable um, to basically just believing things, accepting things,
Mhm.
um, and you're not exercising your critical faculties, which is pretty much necessary in this work.
Yeah, I agree. It's huge to be able to like challenge or just inquire in the moment. That's really what it's all about. To be able to have that literal Socratic method, which is what it's termed. I think Socrates was the original podcaster. He's definitely
Yeah,
one
I
of the
wish we had
first.
a. I wish we had more record. I wish we had a recording of it. Just
I know,
like
right? Oh, can you imagine the dialogues? There's
it would
probably
probably
AI.
just it'd probably just be Socrates just grilling poor people, like not like poor in their resources, but just like people who never saw this type of investigation coming, because a lot of the people, from my understanding, that he would talk to were self-proclaimed wise people, and then
Mm,
they were just presenting their wisdom to the world, and then Socrates comes along and he's just like just inquiring deeper and deeper, like, how do you know what you know? Like,
mhm.
why is it that you're saying that? Are you sure about that? What's your epistemology? And it gets to the point where they're just like, what, like they just got like frustrated at him, and um eventually it just led to so much chaos that they had to eliminate him.
Yeah, that's
Which is how
crazy.
you know you're onto something, is when you get people so upset that they just have to get rid of you, because
He's
you're
asking too
you're
many questions. Let's get rid of him.
you're revealing how ignorant they actually are, and
Yeah,
people hate when you do that.
that's how revolutionary he was. That's so true. And sometimes that's why conversation is important, because we have to be revolutionary and take on that revolutionary spirit ourselves, and challenge our own thoughts and what you think you know and how wise you are. You do that with somebody else that also holds you in the same regard, like holds that same intention. It's very powerful. That's for sure. Very powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
it's why epistemology is so critical. And epistemology being how do you know what you know? And if you're not looking at that, it's like you're just operating from belief and you're operating from hearsay or you're operating from a desire to have something be true versus knowing something is true. I would say most don't even know what it feels like to know something. They only know what it feels like to have a strong belief or to refer to an authority that they trust about something.
Yeah.
The genuine feeling of direct knowing is something I think reserved for a very select few people who
Mm.
have gone through the process of self criticality and Socratic methodology to burn down all of the nonsense and belief.
Yeah, man.
Because when you really ask, how do I know this? You're challenging the foundation, and you're not just listening to or believing someone who says or claims that they know something.
Hmm.
Um,
All said.
and it's so much more powerful. You're so much more powerful if you have that groundedness in epistemology. And I
Mm.
like to say you can't be fucked with by
Yeah.
lies and ignorant people. And one of the things I often see is people actually getting upset when their beliefs are challenged. And this
Hmm.
to me this to me communicates that they don't have a foundation in epistemology. They don't know why they know it. They just know that they want they just have it as something they're holding to because the truth doesn't need to be defended. It's like it's true whether or not someone challenges it or
Yeah.
not. And if you're feeling like you have to defend it, you're likely not operating out of truth. It's just a
Yeah.
an emotional attachment to a belief that now when you feel threatened, you're like, oh no, my foundation is falling apart. And exactly like as it should, because it's uh if it's capable of falling apart, then it wasn't really solid in the first place.
That is true.
Yeah.
Well said, man. Yeah, and when two people approach that, or two or more people approach with that intention, then that's really where the fruits come in a good conversation. It is difficult though to find somebody that is on that wavelength with no motive, no ego, no agenda, even if it's inadvertent, to have that and to be completely open with another person is very rare. But when it happens, it feels good. It feels just like there's something resonant. I don't know, when you're really connected, I think we all know what that feels like. It may seem rare, but to truly connect with somebody, no motive, not trying to be right, not trying to look cool, like no motive. Like, what are we really, to really not only challenge, but inquire about another person and what, like, really be curious, not challenging for challenging sake, right? Like, to actually, like, know why they think what they think without trying to prove them wrong, to actually, like, try to, like, know how they think. That's, I don't know, that's powerful to be able to do that. And if they allow you to do that without having that defense mechanism up and are okay with being wrong or right, that leads to just insight, I feel. That leads to just a natural, like, one mind. It's like when you approach, when you have the intention of two or more people in that, it's like you're trading off like a tennis match of the mind and you go back and forth. But when somebody has their block up, then it's like one person isn't playing the game. They're playing a different game. They're not playing tennis. They're not even playing the game. So in that is a sort of flow, it's a sort of flow between two minds. If you can approach with not my truth, but we're approaching the truth, whatever that is, we're approaching some kind of agreement or foundation of truth. We're trying to extract something from the ethers, from our subconscious, from our minds, somewhere. We're trying to extract something that will hopefully be beneficial for us and maybe even ideally the greater good of everyone else. That's how I approach conversations. I don't know about you, but I
No,
try to
it's
approach it in that way.
this is what the way I think of it is the philosopher named Hegel. He talked about this and he calls
Hmm.
it Hegelian dialectic, which requires which is basically a way of synthesizing new knowledge from two perspectives. And it requires both people address the point the other has made directly. And
Yeah.
So it requires someone presenting a synthesis, or so, sorry, someone presenting a thesis, which is like a proposition, and then the other person essentially, to create new knowledge, will present an antithesis to the thesis, which is a challenge. This is how knowledge is created. Um, and in that process, and this is how I would say even Socratic dialogue or any productive discussion works, is I present a thesis, and you can either agree with that thesis or disagree with that thesis, which is the antithesis. And between those two people, ideally, it creates a synthesis that is a higher level than both individuals had started with. And that's why conversation is helpful, or that's one of the ways it can be helpful,
Yeah.
versus like someone presenting a thesis and then the other person just um,
Presenting another
the,
thesis. They're just going off,
well, the problem is if I present a thesis and they don't present like and they're not challenging it, or they're not even um
inquiring about it. They're not diving into the thesis.
they're not even uh presenting a point that addresses what was just said.
Yeah.
Like I might say something in like a typical conversation, maybe I'm out or just engaged in a social setting. I might present a thesis, and then they'll just present another thesis that's like not even related. And so
Yep.
there's no new knowledge creation. There's like
Yeah.
they see that was what was said, and then there's just like, okay, cool, like let's talk about this now. And I'm just like,
Yeah. I
I'm
know
like,
you feel
okay.
good.
Um, and this is fine. The goal of most conversations isn't the synthesis of new knowledge, which is I've totally come to terms with that, and I don't expect it. But this is what conversation is for, um, is to arrive at higher and higher levels of understanding, self-understanding, understanding of
Hmm.
particular topics. But nowadays, when you present an antithesis to someone's thesis, there's often a lot of emotionality involved.
Ego. Hmm.
There's a lot of like, hey, you're not supposed to challenge what I just said,
Yeah.
and that is antithetical to knowledge creation.
Yeah.
So when I find that, it's really exciting to me because I know that my knowledge is limited. And if someone presents an antithesis to the knowledge, get a little giddy because I know that I might be arriving at an even higher point of view.
Hmm.
Like antithesis to a thesis might be like if I'm vegan or whatever. When I say veganism is the number one, diet, the antithesis is, well, this person was on a vegan diet and they were unhealthy and they transitioned to meat and now they experience better health. Like that's an antithesis. So there's potentially a higher level of truth than just this diet is absolutely perfect. Like maybe it isn't. Or
Yeah.
say the antithesis to an omnivorous diet or a carnivorous diet is someone was on it. And you present, well, this person here, counterexample, transitioned to vegan diet and now they're healthier. That's a antithesis to that. So there's always
Hmm.
like there's a higher point of view than picking one of these particular diets. But I often notice on both sides, veganism, omnivorous diet, instead of reaching a higher level of synthesis, they will double down on what they believe.
Hmm.
And they won't actually arrive at higher knowledge. They'll arrive at a higher level of egotism and pride about what
Yep.
they've already believed. And that's not a conversation. That's
Argument.
just that's an argument.
Yeah.
That's not productive. It's actually
Mm-mm.
counterproductive. It will put you further. It'll push you further away from truth.
Yep.
Um,
All said.
so
Hmm. Yeah, man. Any good debate is like that. Depending upon the subject matter, it really doesn't matter actually. But any good debate is like that.
yeah,
Either
if they
party,
approach it with the goal of synthesis of knowledge,
synthesis. Think of how that's worded. Synthesis. It's the synthesis of two theses.
yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Mm. Yeah, man. Uh, the
So that's like
highest.
that's my goal often is like when I hear a
Yeah.
thesis, my mind and I this is what Socrates, this is the Socratic method. The mind naturally will default to identifying antitheses, or counter
Mm.
examples to what was said. Not because I want to be a dick, not because I want to just challenge because I think I'm right, but because I understand that if the person is in a correct mentality, that they'll appreciate uh, having a perspective that's truer than the perspective they've presented. In the same way, I appreciate when somebody challenges a perspective I have, or gives a counterexample. Um,
Hmm.
like there's nothing bad that happens from being true or having a clearer perspective about something, other than the effacement of your ego and the bad feelings that come along with being like quote unquote wrong about something.
Yeah,
Like we're all wrong about it,
we're
about
all
most
wrong.
things, at least partially.
Yeah, the most Socratic idea that you can take on is I know that I know nothing at all.
Yeah, like I know
Really?
the knowledge I have is limited,
Yeah.
and anyone that can point that out is doing me a service. And the
Mm.
more I hold that perspective as the way as true, the more able I am to integrate new knowledge and to transcend um, limiting beliefs, which is always going to put me in a position of higher stability in my own mind, even
Hmm.
if in the interim it creates chaos, which it typically does when you have a belief that's challenged that you've used as a ground for yourself, and now all of a sudden someone pulls that rug out from underneath you. There'll be a phase of chaos and potentially depression or
Yeah,
just
man.
sadness or whatever. But that is always preceded by a higher level of stability, assuming you see the value in higher truth. But
Amen to that.
having
Hmm.
that maturity with like knowledge is quite rare actually. um
Yeah, it's rare, but it's worth it to have no foundation. You know,
yeah, you
to
get to a place where every foundation is like you're just distrustful of it all. It's like there's nowhere to stand.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the,
man.
mo- the most solid foundation is none at all,
Hmm. In a free fall.
and even that can't be a foundation because then you find something that actually works and it's like wait, so you have
Yeah,
to even with that.
yeah, yeah. This we still have foundations of things that we know. That's the thing. Um, doesn't mean just be willy nilly and challenge everything, right?
Yeah, like absolute truth.
What about absolute truth?
Like if you arrive at absolute truth, that is a foundation,
Oh yeah, but that
and you
even
can.
can't be spoken of. That's the thing. We can try and speak of it, but absolute truth is not to be spoken of, which is the Tao, the true Tao, is not to be named, as they say. uh, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
we can try.
is that even an absolute truth though? Because you've just spoken about it, just
The only
talked about
truth
it.
is that there is no absolute truths, or, or
Except
vice
this,
versa.
except the only truth is there's no absolute truth, except that truth, right? Oh, like like that's the truth. Is that the
It can just
truth?
keep
Is it
going. Yeah, you can
just
just
the
keep going.
infinite, like recursive?
At
Like
the end of the
whenever
day,
someone says something like, "The only thing that we can know is that we know nothing," and I'm like, "Are you sure about that?
yeah, that's the correct response
How
to
did
that.
you arrive at that
Yeah,
point? Is that then the absolute truth? And if it isn't, then what you just said has negated itself. Now
yeah.
you don't even have that
I go back and forth. I guess it depends on the day.
now.
Some day I wake up and like I know absolutely nothing. Then another day I wake up, I'm like, yeah, I got something figured out here. I'm doing good. I'm doing all right for myself. Somewhere in the middle.
How do you know that you know absolutely nothing?
That's the thing. I don't. How do I know I know absolutely? Well, put it this way. How do I know that I know absolutely nothing? How would I answer that? Because I have come to realize through a subjective experience, direct experience, through psychedelics, through just meditations, that there's no possible way that I could know everything. That's for sure. There's no possible way that I could know this infinite universe, know who really what I am. So it's not that I know nothing. I know a little bit. I know a little bit to get by. I know maybe some relative stuff about this reality. I know that I exist, but I'm definitely never gonna know everything. That's for sure. So, like I said, I'm somewhere in the middle. There's no way to possibly know everything within this little monkey mind, within this little monkey
Would you
brain.
say you know that you won't ever be able to know everything, or you have faith
Yeah.
in that?
Do I have faith? Yeah, there. It almost is like a sort of faith,
Like
right?
you
It
believe
almost
that?
is. Yeah, I do believe that. Like that, I will never know everything. Maybe when I die, I'll know everything. But at least as I'm incarnated as Gary, there's no way to know everything. I don't think there's. It's not like how would you know everything? That doesn't even make any sense. You know what I mean? So in turn, I know very little because we live in an infinite universe. It's like I
Yeah,
know nothing.
I don't know how much I could know. I don't know how much I could know.
Well, let me ask you, what do you know? Because we said like this is so esoteric. So we said like, how do you know that you know nothing? But we know a little bit. I've come to the conclusion. I know a little bit. I know something, a little something. I got some realization, some understanding of myself, a little bit. Give me some credit. So what
Like if
do
I,
you know?
do you know that if I drop this, it will fall?
When you say no, that would say 100%. I know that it will fall. I'm 99.999% sure, but there's always that like 0.01%. So it's like, can you actually know something 100%? I guess is a better question. Like, how do you know something 100%? I don't know if you can, other than existence itself. I know that, like, in this moment, I'm here right now as we're speaking. I guess that's the only thing I can know, but you dropping that 99.99999999999% sure that it will fall, but I don't know. Maybe it
I
won't.
mean,
Maybe.
maybe maybe we've entered a maybe gravity is somehow has changed and it just stays where it is after I let it go. Or you can only know it the second it does fall or the second it's falling.
Yeah, man. You can say that about anything. So I think we talked about this before actually. Everything is just chance. Like everything,
Well,
all of our understanding is just
you know
chances that we weigh. Go ahead.
you know what's in front of you, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if I know this is say like you may not know what it is, you might not know like the right way to describe it, but whatever this is you know it. Like
Yeah.
and when I drop it as it's falling, you know that's happening. But before I do it,
Yeah.
um, it's an inference.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's all inferences.
everything happening in the experience here is known.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can deny it, but the denial is also part of that. And that's
Mm.
knowledge.
Yeah, man. Very true. Every prediction of the future, every prophecy is really just an inference when it comes down to it. Because there is no future. Like there really is no future until it arrives. But when it
Yeah, it's
arrives,
all
it's not the
concept.
future. Jeez. Time. That's why I'm a little like when people have prophecies of the future, I'm a little like, you sure about that? Because it's like, how do you know the future if there is technically no such thing as the future? Some people say it's all predetermined so that they have like they can get some kind of transmission from the being so present, they can somehow feel the presence of the future. Like there is no future. So like they can feel that. And I'm like, okay, I can see that point of view if
Well,
that even made sense.
inference is extremely can be extremely accurate. Like the reason we can shoot spaceships into the sky and land them on planets is via inference because of knowledge of or estimates and laws that we've been able to arrive at through experimenting, but even those are imperfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think if a person is very tuned in to the certain principles of universal principles, um, they can with confidence predict things. It's just um, it's not always going to be. You can't ever say this has to be the way it is, but it can be likely. Like
Yeah.
I think that premonitions and things are never fate. It's just as if you've applied Newtonian mechanics, or you just know how things work according to cause and effect.
I get you.
Or like a
Yeah.
rubber band, like if you stretch it out, it will snap back. And I think there's universal principles that are the same that if you really understand them, you can not only predict events that will happen, but you can structure your reality currently to facilitate what you want to happen in
Mhm.
a more like magical type way. But it's not really magic. It's just like science, just a different
Yeah.
form, like
It's not
alchemy.
magic like Harry Potter. I know what you mean. But real magic in our reality, not in the Harry Potter universe, is sort of scientific in that way. And it is all based upon cause and effect. And can become a magician in that way if you know how to bend the matrix, in that sort of manner of cause and effect, and you have an understanding in that way. magic and science is a fine line in our reality, but it's real. Magic is real. Magic with a K, as they say. It's a real thing. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's nothing more than just understanding reality. Like, I
Mm.
think people have a lot of misconceptions around magic being a dark force or something that is only done by uh,
Voldemort.
negative
Mm-hmm.
negative entities or this type of thing. Like, oh, magic is like witchcraft. Like, it's really not. It's every I perceive everyone as capable and actively engaging with magic every day.
Oh yeah,
It's just an unconscious activity for
yeah,
99% of people.
exactly. And that's how you
So
become the magician. Is you become conscious and you have intention in one's action. That's what Aleister Crowley says. He says the basis of all magic, and he's the magic guy. If you want to learn what magic is, read his stuff. He says the basis of all magic is based upon intention. And it's a matter if you're in tune with your intention or not. Are you living on somebody else's intentions, or are you really cultivating your own intention within? That's really it. That's
yeah,
the basis of magic. It's pretty simple. Just have intention, the way that you think, and your whole lifestyle, and the actions that you take, and you can start to perform some magic tricks in your life.
yeah. And once you get super aligned, like aligned with this, with your intention, your thoughts, and your actions, um, stuff starts happening like very rapidly. Like things, your intentions start occurring, appearing, like coming back to you, like in shorter cycles. Like
Mm,
I think that if you're very aware of, um, like I said, certain principles of cause and effect within your mind, and you're integrating and aligning yourself, and you're like your action, your thoughts, your actions, and your speech are basically all on the same wavelength. Your capacity to affect things in the world will be enhanced, not just because, like, not just physically, like you'll be able to be more productive,
yeah.
but it's as if reality itself is will then start to be part of your actions. Like you become like a magnet, like a you start to you pull in those things. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you you're lining up things, and then that those things start to, yeah, it's like it's attractive. It's attractive
Yeah.
to you. And if those intentions, actions, and thoughts are all about you being a worthless human being,
Yeah.
you're going to find that very very true for yourself. These
Yeah.
that will be reflected. You'll
Yeah,
find
man.
partners, friends, shows on TV that reflect that truth, and
Yep.
circumstances and environments that reinforce it, like
Yeah.
magically. You'll see
Yes.
this.
Yeah. Like attracts like. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like it's also really good like advice for like for I would say men or women in the dating world, like the way you perceive yourself, the way you visualize who you are
Mm.
is the type of person that will be reflected often in your
Frame.
partners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
And
For
that might be
sure.
what you need. Like you need to be with somebody who's actually I don't really buy into that model at all, actually.
What's that?
That you find who you need. Like you just find what you are. And that might not be that might not be necessarily like good for you. I think
Yeah.
uh I don't really buy into a lot of like um you find the person you need to grow the most. And like really, like I don't know if Mary
Mm.
getting like beat all like Mary just being some random just theoretical person, like Mary getting like beat and having her life thrown around is necessarily what she needs. I think that could be avoided
Yeah.
given her understanding of principles of mind, alchemy, and along these types of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
So, yeah,
Alchemy. It's so simple when we describe it like that, yet it seems to be difficult in our world. But the true way of the sage is that mind, body, spirit in alignment. And what did you say? You said thoughts, actions, and intention. Was that it? There was three things that you said were in
intentions,
alignment.
thoughts, actions,
Yeah.
speech, which is a
Speech. That's what it is.
type of
Speech, of
action.
course. Yeah. I mean, that's the third eye, the throat chakra, and the solar plexus chakra right there. You just described. And you get the heart in
But
there.
by thoughts, I mean a lot of what you believe. Like it happens in an order. Like a lot of people I notice they get like really they almost become super fixated on like the words they speak when it's not as the words they speak are important, but it's not as important as what they actually truly believe.
Hmm.
Like if they believe they are say unattractive, and then just look in the mirror and they say I'm attractive. It's not going to be as significant of a thing to say those words as to actually somehow shift the belief,
Yeah.
um, which I understand can be difficult, but
How would you say we
it's
shift our beliefs rather than just shifting the way we say?
well,
Like, how
first
do we really get
by
to the foundation?
you have to identify them as beliefs. You have to see what it is that you're buying into as a belief. And then you have to see that beliefs are very limited tools that are not grounded in anything but themselves. Like epistemology asks, how do you know what you know? And so if I have a belief about being unattractive, the sort of thing that you want to look at is why is that true? Why do I believe that? And then you look at those reasons, and usually it's because, there's a lot of reference experiences. Maybe I was rejected, maybe this happened, and then
I
you
got you.
sort
Yeah.
of you sort of do the Hegelian dialectic type thing. You present antithesis to that belief. Like,
Hmm.
well, I'm sure not everybody has thought you were not attractive. I'm sure there's been certain people, and if there hasn't been any, maybe you can create a counterexample such as, well, this person's even uglier than me, like on quote unquote on paper, and they're finding, you know, they're attracting people. So your belief is subject to if your belief is subject to antitheses, it isn't true. It's grounded in itself. So you don't want to change your beliefs by just reinforcing like another belief necessarily. You can do that, but it's more powerful to begin to create antitheses to the beliefs you have. First, by seeing that they're beliefs, it's not knowledge. They're more like inferences. They're more like estimations that can be challenged, counterexamples.
Hmm.
So you just want to get to higher synthesis. You want to synthesize higher truth, and then ground your trade foundations in those, which requires a lot of internal maturity.
That's for sure. A lot of
Um,
introspection, to
and
say the
you'll
least.
you'll eventually find that like these beliefs are just because they're being held on to because um, there's biases and there's desires and there's places that you don't want to look, which is where you need to look.
Yeah.
And this process is, it's ongoing, and this is how these sort of beliefs can be disintegrated over time. And
Hmm.
you might need a friend to do that for you. Like you might not be strong enough internally. You might not have an integrated enough mind yet to do that. But I would say starting to challenge the beliefs is always, going to be helpful.
I think so.
Yeah,
Or else you're living in an illusion of belief, false
yeah. Beliefs
beliefs.
beliefs are they serve like beliefs aren't just totally useless. They serve utility. Uh, but the utility they serve isn't towards truth, it's towards survival of certain patterns that want
Hmm.
to continue. Like these patterns have an energy of their own. I almost think of the energy of these patterns as like possessions. Like they're like little, like they're things that are possessing the person. The person
Yeah.
isn't the person doesn't necessarily want these things, but they want to experience in a sense like relief from pain. They want to feel safe, and unless they have the beliefs, they won't feel those things.
Hmm. You said it, man. I think it's rooted in our desires. I think that's where a lot of the beliefs come from. Is what we want. Our pleasures and our aversions.
Well, the
That's like.
desires we have are given to us usually by our external environment.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like
We don't
nobody
even know that
wants,
though.
no, nobody wants like things that haven't been presented by their society as good. Like people want resources and certain material things because that's the standard of the societal ideal. But these aren't things that they came to on their own. They just kind of given the desires. Most people are given the desires. Most
I
people
think
want to be,
everybody.
yeah.
It's in our loins, man. It's in our DNA to have desires and conditioning. You know, I think it's based upon. I mean, it's based upon evolution essentially, but it's based upon because we evolved from a scarcity mindset, so we needed to have these false beliefs based upon desires in order to just simply survive. And we're still working with that. We're working with that same way of computing, but in a different world now, where we have endless desires at our like we have endless ways to fulfill the desires. So it gets us essentially it gets us fucked up, gets us messed up because we're in this like weird loop of being able to have these beliefs, hold these beliefs that are based upon desires, continually fulfill the desires, and never really challenge the belief because we're never challenging where the desire came from. It's just like because how do I put this, man? We never really given the chance to see beyond it. We're conditioned into it from a young age, you know. Yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. I mean, that's Maya, man. That's Maya. It's very thick, but I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. It all comes from desire because we want something out of this world, and that is based, and we base that on who we are, and yeah, this just gets us fucked up. I don't know how else to say it, man. I'm kind of at a loss for words.
I
Kind of
understand what you're
toasted right
saying.
now. I feel high. I haven't smoked anything.
Why do you feel that way? Just,
I don't. I don't know.
yeah,
I
sometimes I
don't
can
know.
feel that. Like,
Yeah.
more, the more groundless a person is, I think, the more like the feeling of being high is like um, present. Sometimes, like I was saying earlier, uh, before we started recording, the sense of like samadhi or concentration can be something a person like just kind of like slips into
Yep.
um, when
Guilty.
there's not a lot of uh, one structures in the mind that the mind can like rest on, right? Because like belief systems are, it almost feels like these like safe spaces for the mind to like nestle into, and they create a sense of groundedness. And when you get rid of that, and even belief systems about who and what you are, um, the mind is just like it's in a stasis.
Mm,
And if the
that's
mind doesn't
good,
have
bro.
a problem, if it doesn't have a problem with that, if it's not like freaking out, like trying to find a new ground, it's uh, it's very peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like don't have anything to say. It's weird. It's like I don't want to believe anything. Oh man, what's another topic we can talk about? You have anything else? We were gonna talk about divine masculine and feminine, right?
This
Um,
is really important.
what's
These two
that?
things, the
Yeah,
feminine and masculine polarity of reality.
yeah.
Um,
Well, we started with how, to me personally, there's something so, oh man, intoxicating about just a truly feminine woman, somebody who is very in tune with that energy within themselves. Um, to me, as a man, as a masculine man, somewhat masculine man, it's oh man, it's the most like primordial energy I feel that is attractive, and not in necessarily in a sexual sense, just like there's some sort of resonance with a very grounded, in tune woman that, to me, is like nothing else that I've ever felt that I could feel. Like when you're really like in tune with somebody that is in tune, that is of the opposite sex, opposite energy, the other side of the pole per se. Just something happens, man. It's like a dance, you know. It's very strange, and I'm not even talking about sex. Like I said, the almost like it's like weird feeling that you can have.
well,
It's just
it's something
intoxicating.
it's something that transcends and includes sex. It's something that
It
is
includes it for
part and
sure.
parcel of everything,
Yeah.
including human interaction and even interaction with just yourself or with reality. Like the masculine and feminine element is always dancing and always interplaying in this
That's it.
somewhat of a um it's a dance. Like they require they require the other in order to reach the highest level of truth, in my sense.
Hmm.
The masculine is absolutely necessary to ground truth um, in the mind, and then the feminine is necessary um, to integrate. Here's another way of saying it. It's like without the masculine, the feminine element of reality can't fully exist. It requires a stable, I guess it requires something still
Yeah.
to impress itself upon. I almost think of the masculine element as like awareness, or as the place in which uh, reality is creating, like experience, colors, things that are happening are like the feminine, and then the awareness of those things is like the masculine.
Hmm.
Um, and without those two things, that neither can really exist fully.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a dance. It's a dance.
One second. That's
You good?
something actually what's going on.
What happened?
I'm just turning off my phone. It was making
Oh, okay.
noise.
Um, yeah, man. Um, it's the dance, man. Yeah, it's the dance. Masculinity is a sort of structure to like the aspiration of femininity. It's a sort of like yeah, it's like it's not exactly creative energy, but it's more so like how it's molded and sculpted, takes shape and takes form. Like feminine energy is like endless possibility, right? Think of a feminine woman, just endless possibility, talking to everybody. There's so much energy. But a man is like the hard rock, right? We've all heard that. Somebody that is like grounds that into reality. And that interplay between the two is a beautiful creation, and it's actually a literal beautiful creation of a human being, ideally, as well. That's where it comes at the most primordial sense. But also, like, in every sense of masculine and feminine energy, it's some sort of just beautiful creation that comes from it. You can't just, it's almost like this may be a little crude example, way too simple, but masculine energy is like order, feminine energy is chaos. And between the two is just this beautiful, like you said, dance, this synchronicity of two different polar opposites that create the universe essentially. What I'm talking about between order and chaos? And not chaos in a negative sense. It's not like we think of chaos as like, oh, it's just craziness, but not like that. More so just like endless possibility.
I understand what it means, and I often hear that as the way in which masculinity and femininity are described. I know Peterson likes to describe it this way. I don't think he specifically says it, but I kind of get that sense.
You said
Um,
Jordan Peterson?
yeah, he'll imply masculinity is, or the man is the ordered element, and the female is the chaotic element. And I
Hmm.
think I would phrase it slightly differently because the connotations with chaos. I would say
Yeah,
it's
right.
something more. It's something like more like um, spontaneous originality,
Yeah, I like that.
or
It's a better way of saying it.
creativity,
Yeah,
ungrounded
ungrounded
creativity,
creativity. Yeah.
something that happens not as a result of preconditions, but as a result of, um, you could almost say, freedom itself. Um,
Mm.
I
Hmm.
think when you say chaos, it implies there isn't an order to it. Like when someone's chaotic, genuinely chaotic, they're more or less just schizophrenic. Like they're just like, whoa, like everything's like, they're
Yeah.
just like they're just like unpredictable or which isn't necessarily what I consider femininity. It's more like it's a spontaneous in a direction, typically in the direction of higher degrees of love and uh, pleasure, or maybe not even just pleasure itself, but something like that, something like uh, uh, beauty. Like, but it's
Hmm.
ordered. It's ordered in the sense that that there's a trajectory it's heading, and
Yeah.
that trajectory tends to be towards higher degrees of interconnection, higher degrees of artistry, higher degrees of creativity, and then the order element is the it's like when the feminine creates a pattern, because all completely new patterns I would consider to be like a feminine thing. Like if something's completely spontaneously new and it creates a pattern of like a flower, like it creates like this sort of new like spontaneous like thing that you can't really predict how it's going to come, but it somehow like manifests as like an element of reality. The masculine then almost like sees that, takes notes on it, writes it down, and then it creates even higher like structure around it, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it structures more and more and more as the feminine is in within those structures, creating more originality. And
Yeah.
so this seems to be more of an accurate depiction of it, in my
I
opinion.
get it.
Just like disordered, complete chaos, which is, I think, a little bit of a, it's a little,
Yeah.
it's not true. It doesn't fully capture what femininity is. And I think it degrades it slightly to say it's simply chaos.
Hmm.
Um,
I think the
because
other side also, like, complete order out of masculinity is the same way too. Like, what is complete order? That's like, that's dystopian, you know? It's just hard to describe. Those are just like two
yeah,
polar
like you could
opposites.
see total order as like you're almost creating a tyrannical
Yeah.
type of perspective of of masculinity, when I
Yeah.
think there's a there's an appreciation for beauty in the masculine because it has to select certain things to create order from, and so it needs to be open to disorder. It has to have space for disorder to create order.
Hmm.
um, but it is definitely more of an ordered and structured type of thing. Like it's almost like more of a conservative. You can see this like you see the masculine feminine manifest in politics as conservatism
Yeah.
and liberalism. It's like these polarities naturally are manifest in almost every faction of human interaction and systems and
Hmm.
in nature. Like
Hmm.
I'm not saying that you are not masculine if you're liberal or you're not feminine if you're conservative. You have to be in some level integration of those two things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, nowadays we see that these two elements don't actually find as much utility in the other and prefer to combat each other as opposed to synthesize and
Hmm.
create. Conservatism is, in my opinion, meant to facilitate structure and keep things functional that have worked, and liberalism is meant to build on top of that and reach higher heights of beauty and artistry. And ideally, they would see those benefits in each other mutually and work in tandem. But it's this there's a sickness currently with this, not
Yeah.
just in politics, but actually in the real human relationship of masculine and feminine. And we're seeing it in modern dating. It's actually really unfortunate how
Mm.
men
Yeah.
and women are relating nowadays. It's
That's
really
the prime
combative.
example of it.
Uh,
Yeah.
um,
Also within ourselves. I think that's really where it all stems from, is that masculine and feminine spectrum within ourselves. We all have that. To not
yeah,
embrace that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It has to be like I think as a man, if you create space in yourself to cultivate feminine energy, not only does it help you understand women, understand feminine qualities in people, but it helps you as a man um, deepen your own masculinity because um, if you can be sensitive, you begin to see how stability um, you can more deeply cultivate stability.
Mm.
Like oftentimes like you see men become more masculine when they find their counterpart, their feminine counterpart, or there's more of a what is it like they feel more of a man like when they're with a woman, right? A lot of men talk about this. Like, I feel like a man. I like want to protect and provide. And when there's not a woman there, there's not as much of an impetus to do that. But if they
Yeah.
create the impetus inside of themselves, if they cultivate femininity in themselves, then they can cultivate simultaneously higher degrees of masculinity. They don't have to always operate out of the feminine, but if it's there present in them, then they can. And I would say if they're just cultivating just masculinity, more and more and more and more masculinity, they actually become slightly ungrounded and uh,
Yeah.
they don't actually they can't actually hold a space for femininity in a skilled way because they're
Mm-hmm.
so like in their own like idea and concept of what masculinity is, and this is how you end up with like these super macho masculine guys that are totally out of touch with women, and they just have no concept of like, I didn't know my woman was thinking that, and they're just like these like insensitive,
Mm-hmm.
incapable, like they're not. It's not masculine. It's just
No,
it's kind of delusion.
it's completely delusion. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because what real masculinity is at its highest level. It's able to, you could say the divine masculine is able to perfectly hold space for femininity, and it understands it and it
Mm-hmm.
knows how to respond to it.
And vice
It's
versa.
not, yeah, it's vice versa. And that's how you reach the highest degrees of potential is the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Not the idea of masculinity, like because if the idea of masculinity reaches uh finds the divine feminine, it's gonna want to, it might even be threatened by it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not gonna understand it. It's not gonna know how to hold space for it. And then what naturally happens is the divine feminine has to like teach the divine masculine how to like grow up out of its ideas of uh, immature masculinity. And this is what happens often with women that are like teaching these like super tough guys how to like actually like be a human being. It's like
Yeah.
that's the job of the divine feminine to do that. But
Yeah.
imagine he was there already, then that would be a mutual,
Mm.
all
Mm-hmm.
mutual.
To tame the beast, to sublimate it. Yeah, man. Yeah. It's interesting. Now, do you think when we create children off of a healthy relationship of masculine and feminine, that creates like a wonderful person essentially? So, a lot of people say that birth starts at conception, you know, or it starts at a certain amount of weeks. Who knows? Do you think it like starts when you're cultivating this energetic connection with another person? Because I do. I sort of think it's like when you're in the session of like having sex, like that's when the person is created. Like, are you guys at that right energy? I feel like it's, if we're talking energetic now, what about like when you create a person?
I
It's
have no
got to
idea.
have an effect. Would you
I
say?
don't know. I have no idea when conception begins.
When it
I
begins? Yeah, it began
I
at
know
the
it.
beginning
I
of
know
time.
obviously in sex there's a high level of interaction, a high level of synergy between the two energies. Um, but in terms of when a consciousness is born, I don't know.
Yeah.
How would you know? I've
I don't
reached the
think there
point
is a
of
starting point. There is
like
not like a.
yeah, the epistemology of it is like, how do you know what you know? Like I've thought about this, and it's to the point where there's a threshold at which you can't know, right? And I'm aware that I can't know, and so it defaults to like if we're talking about issues of like when is a child there, and is it okay to abort it at before or after. It's like the position is you can't know, and when you act like you are you are not acting from truth, you're acting from belief, and in all likelihood you're acting out of a belief that's been given to you by the side of politics you identify with. You're not thinking as an independent as independently as you could. Because if you were, I assume your epistemology would you arrive at the understanding that you can't know certain things.
Mhm.
And then what you do with that knowledge, if you don't know, is up to you. You could still decide it's okay or it's not okay, but you have to have a foundation of truth. You can't just say a belief and just say like this is how it is because your epistemology isn't there. It's not. You have to see that. Like same with sex. Like you might say it like, oh, I believe it starts at sex, and I would say, are you sure? Like, how do you know that? And I assume it would boil down to, well, I believe that's true because of X, Y, Z feelings and thoughts,
Yeah.
and this is there's a lot of energy, or there's a lot of stuff going on. Like that's all true, but
Hmm.
if you're jumping from that then to the conclusion of this is when conception starts, I think you're making a mistake.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's any solid point of when it starts per se. It's like when you guys look in each other's eyes for the first time, start then. No, but I do think there is influence on how the relationship unfolds, on how the baby is going to be. You know, like the whole relationship altogether, I think is going to have an effect on the future child. Like the energy that you put in your whole entire like relationship with the other person is going to be, whenever that baby decides to be made, have an effect. There is not necessarily a starting point. You could say that even starts within yourself. You know, that starts right now, right here, right now. Your future kid could start right here, right now. But I do think there is an effect. You know, there's some kind of effect based upon the intention that you have with the other person. And most people's intention when they go to make a child is not making a child. So I
Let's
think that's why a lot of us are
let's
messed
have
up.
fun. Let's
Mm-hmm.
experience pleasure,
Mm-hmm. But truly
which is
approaching another person, right, and saying like, all right, we're gonna be in this holy matrimony with a piece of paper or not, you know, but we're gonna be in this together, and both of our intentions are going to embrace masculine and feminine energies in whatever dance that we go about it, for the end goal of eventually creating a child. And I think when that time that you create a child happens with that intention, with both parties, that child would be a superstar. Because I know if there are previous lives, if there's an ether world where we decide our parents, and some people say there is, I would want to pick that. I would want to pick a firmly grounded relationship of two beings. Like there's just something about that energy that is way better than just like some one night stand accident. Who knows? I don't know how, if I could
I
just
think
be
there's a lot of
bullshitting.
yeah, there's a lot of influences I think we are just can't be aware of. Like you know, a person might enter this world with certain faculties that are higher than their parents. So they might be coming into this place with higher levels of development than their parents. They may not. They may come in and teach their parents how to be more masculine and more feminine. Or they might come with absolutely ungroundedness into a household with really grounded parents.
Mm-hmm.
And those parents do everything they can, but say their child is a hard case and they just end up not learning those skills. I'm not saying any of this is the way it actually is. I'm just saying I don't know. Like, how could I know? Like, do we pick our parents? Some people say we do. Do I personally know that? No. And even if I had an experience that pointed to that, it would still be like, is this a true experience or is it more just like a dream? So really, what I think is the
Yeah, who
most
knows,
like
right? Who knows?
the most poignant thing um, is to just see that is it beneficial? Is it more beneficial for parents to provide a balance between the masculine and feminine, and on both sides have a strong groundedness in that? And I would say, undoubtedly, it
Yeah.
is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think having a hyper feminine approach to raising children is going to be as helpful as having uh, a sort of balance between the two. And even that could be questioned, maybe because I know a lot of really powerful men who were raised by single mothers who are feminine, and maybe they chose that person because they had a bias towards the masculine, and now they can, create something of a balance between the two of those people. Like
Yeah.
I'm not on one side of anything. Like I'm not saying that each child will benefit most from a nuclear two-parent always home. Like sure, statistics will point in certain directions, but each case is case by case.
Yeah. It's
Like
hard to
there
generalize.
are there are men that are young children that will thrive in a single parent household, and there are certain children that will be have a really, really hard time in those situations.
Mm.
So I think it boils down to the um, it, boils down to things that we can't really be certain of. Um, so in general, what a person, I think we can say a person will benefit the most is if they find some type of balance in themselves, like
Yeah,
in
that's
between
it.
those two things. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I grow up if I say I come into this world and I have a bias towards the masculine, or I have a single parent that's hyper feminine. If I grow up still and I find a way and the parent finds a way to balance that in me, I'm going to benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm raised by two parents. It doesn't necessarily mean both of those parents are going to provide masculine and feminine. Sometimes the man in the relationship will provide the feminine, and the woman will provide the masculine for the child. Um,
Yeah.
this happens often, I think, more often than people think, even if they're
Mm.
both heterosexual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's actually attractive to women that are biased towards the masculine to find a man that is of equal bias towards the feminine, even though
Yeah.
traditionally, you have feminine as female and masculine as male. What's attractive is two people finding a counterpart which balances them.
Mm-hmm. I
Not that
agree.
just women are have to be this feminine thing and men have to. Attraction is the creation is the synergy between what one person is having an absence of.
Yeah.
Uh, so,
It's the dance, man. It's
and
the
if both
dance.
people are balanced, there's still attraction because the potential between them, they're both like I almost see two people who are balanced in the masculine and feminine can can synergize in a way that someone who's biased in one of those things can't. Like two people that have both balance, they can in a way be independent and see each other's uh, blind spots. They can see the feminine blind spot and the masculine blind spot better than a partner who is just biased in the masculine. And I've noticed this even in my own relationships. It's often I'll be with a very feminine woman, and there's not as much of an integration of masculinity in her, and she's incapable of of perceiving certain things that a woman who's balanced could perceive.
Mm.
And ultimately that's slightly less that is of slightly less spiritual utility for me. Not that relationships are strictly for spiritual growth, but at least not for everybody. I think for certain people they are very powerful for that, but everyone
Yeah.
has their own goals, and most of those goals are survival based.
Well,
uh,
hey man, what do you think is spiritual utility or spiritual growth? Because I think that is like the point of life is spiritual growth, really when it comes down to it. So,
yeah, I mean, I
um,
think relationships, ideally conscious relationships, are making this a conscious goal to evolve spiritually with another person. I think that's the most fulfilling thing you can do with another
yeah, you
person.
don't have to, that's for sure. You could just
um
be trying to have some fun on a Friday night, but I
yeah.
think yeah, if you approach it with spiritual growth, that with everything, honestly, with your whole entire life,
No,
with
the
spiritual growth.
spiritual utility is essentially the ability to identify and, in an effective way, present the other partner's shadows and to get them to reflect on things that they may not be able to reflect on themselves because of certain blind spots. Like
Mhm.
they essentially can present a mirror for the
Yeah,
person
that's the guru.
to
Mhm.
see themselves more clearly and the things that they're doing that are stupid and ineffective and keeping them trapped in patterns that don't serve their soul.
That's it. What does
Yeah.
that mean? What is spiritual utility for you? Like not in a relationship. Like how would you describe what that really means to
It's a
grow your soul?
reflector, someone who can reflect, someone who is able to
No, I'm saying
um
not in a relationship. Like what does
oh,
that
just
mean?
in like a teacher or like a
Just in
friendship.
life. What is spiritual growth? That's I know that's very big topic. But how would you summarize what spiritual growth is? And then what's related to relationships? I mean, we kind of already did, but
No,
just for
yeah,
you.
it's I think it might be helpful to identify it in terms of its results.
Okay.
Like the result of someone who is experiencing spiritual growth, or the result of spiritual growth,
Hmm.
is a reduction in neuroticism. It's a reduction in internal conflict. It's a reduction
Suffering?
um, in suffering. It's a reduction in unnecessary suffering in
Yeah.
one's own experience, direct experience of reality.
All
It's
said.
a yeah, it's a it's a calming of one's heart and mind. And it's also a synchronization between the heart and the mind, which is a way of
Yeah.
saying it's you're not getting into as many situations where your heart is in conflict with what you're thinking.
Hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
that's the way. That's like your emotions and your thoughts are in alignment, and you don't have as much of these moments where you feel and think different things.
Yeah.
That's what spiritual
Yeah.
development is. And eventually that leads to being in ultimately full alignment with within yourself, where each action you're taking is happening from without really much effort. Your actions,
Hmm.
your speech, your thoughts are happening kind of spontaneously. And not only
Yeah.
spontaneously, but the effect of them is results in a sense of fulfillment and almost like a quenching. Like you're just like every action you're taking is sweet. Everything you're doing is in and of itself fulfilling, not because you're going to get a result, but because you're in full alignment with your goal and your
Hmm.
heart and what you want to be doing. So each thing you're doing is like it's like music, and the music
Hmm.
is not something you're not trying to get somewhere with music. You're enjoying it as it's happening.
Just play. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
and
Just
if you do
playing.
that, like that's alignment. That's what you're. That's a integrated and developed spirit. And then development from that point forward is that music becoming more and more masterful. So you
Hmm.
might like you can appreciate music that is maybe not even that masterful. It's still music, but you can still appreciate it. And as you're developing, it starts becoming more like a Vivaldi, or it becomes more like a master who's been training, like violinist will train 10 years just to be
Yeah.
able to perform in front of a stage. Like you're just more and more reaching that, but all along that journey, you're enjoying the process, and it
Hmm.
just becomes more and more beautiful. And the effect that has on the world is people begin to perceive it as um, magnificent. Like your effect on the world, anything you do, engagements you have is positive, it's beautiful, it's art.
Contagious. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
people like
man.
that are rare, but when you find someone like that, it's like it's really a beautiful experience
Yes.
because this is someone who's like they're not trying to get something from you. They want to give not just to
Mm.
you, but to everything.
Mm-hmm.
They're acting out of the joy and the love. That's
Joy.
development, and that's what I see the role of anyone who's who say is creating a utility for you spiritually. They'll enhance that ability for you, and they'll
Mm.
accelerate the progress of that masterpiece. Like a teacher of a violin teacher would maybe not as direct as a violin teacher because or as explicit, but just as like they just provide feedback so you can see more clearly what the mistake is that was made,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and then you can update that.
Yeah, man.
But it's up to you. Like you don't have like the development is never going to be something the person can do for you, right?
Mm. Yeah, exactly. You
Yeah,
got to be open to it. And that's with
they can
any
want to as
relationship
much
too.
as they want. Yeah, and I notice this a lot in relationships. There's the one person that always wants to change the person, and they don't change. Like a lot of times they don't change. Sometimes they do.
No, it never works.
You'd
Yeah.
be like, I can fix this person, and men can do this too. Like, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
No. Well said though. Yeah, man. That was well said. Yeah, man. Effortless living. Effortless fulfilled living.
Yeah.
That is the result of spiritual development. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I often think in terms of like if an action taken isn't immediately sweet, isn't immediately like because isn't immediately providing a sense of fulfillment. It's not in full alignment. Because the way I see it is the the best action that can be taken, the most fulfilling action is the action that is in total alignment. And sometimes that will be an experience of pain. Sometimes that will be an experience of doing something that is not doesn't emotionally feel good. Maybe it's like you have to do X amount of hours or maybe X amount of work to get some to produce something. And oftentimes people consider that like as a sacrifice. But I don't think it's a sacrifice if the thing that you're doing is in full alignment with what your soul or your heart is asking you to do. And in fact, if you're doing it in that way, that will be the action that feels and is experienced as the most full or as the most sweet, as the most like at the end of the day, you'll feel like, you know, this has been a day of of beauty, and you won't have that sense of like regret. It's like each action is uh, can be at the end of the day, you can look back at it and say this day was moved through perfectly. This
Mm,
is what I mean by like each action taken is if it doesn't create that for you, then it's likely that it's not fully in alignment and it's not
mm-hmm.
really the best action that could be taken.
Yeah, man.
But if you have that standard of each action should be, I use the term sweet or like providing you something immediately. So there's no other time, but right now, you're never going to get some in the future. This is it. This is it. Like there's nothing more to this. If you
Mm,
start to vector the attention to how can I make this right here always as sweet as possible, then that experience will be enhanced more and more and more and more until each action is like giving you back something immediately. And it's not about arriving at that sort of future goal, even
mm,
though you are moving towards higher levels in the world.
yeah,
And you can have goals and you can have places you're heading, but those places you're heading you'll never perceive them as able to give you something here,
yeah,
because what the thing that will give you the most is exactly what you're doing right now, and it will never
mm,
be different.
yeah, man. Spitting truth. Somewhere between being and becoming. Well said. That's I don't know where that came from for you, but that was well said, man. Damn. Clip that one. I don't even have anything to say to that. You summed that up really, really well.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's about the immediacy of enjoying the experience here and now for sure. And it's not negating the future. The future will always come. But it's like when you stop worrying about the future, if I got to do this, I got to be this person, I got to be here, I got to be there. The present becomes more beautiful. And yes, the future also
Well, it's like
becomes
it's
more
not
beautiful.
even, yeah, yeah, it's more like a seeing that there's never something, the thing that we, want to accomplish um, is never able to provide me with what I want
Yeah.
anywhere else but here.
Mm.
Like, and when it does come, it's preceded by it leaving. So instead, if the mind is like sort of oriented towards um, making the action now as rich, the goal now as aligned, the whole mind starts to like shift from like future oriented thinking to like what is it here and now that I can cultivate? Like what, like I almost think of it as like nectar. Like you're always like a consciousness is always trying to get nectar out of presence.
Yeah, man.
And I don't think that's bad. I think that's why we're here, is to pull like this sort of
The yoke,
the juice of life.
union,
And the
yoga.
juice is right now. It's never in the future.
Yeah,
Right.
man.
It's never going to be literally. It's just, and this is something that's said all the time. So I feel like a little bit, I'm almost
Yeah.
annoyed at that I'm saying it
Be here now. We've all heard that, man. But it is
because
true. All those cliches start to become more and more true as you go within yourself. They start to
we'll see that
make more sense.
the problem I have with it is just like you say that you like be here now, and that's true, right? It's true.
Hmm.
But what happens when you hear those words? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you
The
then
after
try
part.
you then try to
Oh, I gotta
like
be here now. Yeah.
you try to like it almost sometimes reinforces that you could be somewhere else.
Mm.
It almost
Yeah.
it's
It
almost
could.
like
It could. That's for sure. I mean, it's better than saying, "Don't be here now."
and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If it's helpful, then that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But I often think it's disingenuous to tell someone this when they're anxious or when
Yeah.
they're sort of in their mind, like, just be present, bro.
Just live in the moment, bro.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah. No, it's not that easy. It's the thing. Alignment isn't something that one can just tell you. It's actually something that has to be practiced. Like cultivating presence and awareness in one's life isn't just something where you listen to a slogan and it's like, oh, of course. It could act as a reminder, but ultimately that comes through, personally speaking, comes through creating the right rituals for myself to stay aligned. Creating the right sort of lifestyle to be able to be on that wavelength as much as I can. Not getting lost in the sauce. And that's
yeah,
just
it's
through
a
simplification. God, that's all I was gonna say.
I think it's really hard. It's not hard, but it's hard in today's society to have such a purity of your own self, like purity in your
Yeah,
actions with alignment with where you want to be and where you want to
yeah,
go, because you're
yeah.
constantly being inundated with your probably your friend group, what you're
Everything.
watching online, and all
Yeah.
of these things are telling you how to think, whether you are conscious of it or not. Your
Mm-hmm.
exposure to external elements will program you, and 99.x% of content is not orienting you towards deeper self-understanding. It's actually pulling you away from that and installing these like patterns and thoughts of lack, of needing to get somewhere else
Yep.
other than here. Like, and there's nothing wrong with desiring to, or sorry, there's nothing wrong with moving towards making more money. There's nothing wrong with moving towards higher level of alignment or of higher abilities or skills. Like, I'm not in the camp of like have no goals, throw away all your desires, and just pretend like everything's okay. That's not. I think that's inauthentic, and I think that leads to repression and avoidance
Yeah.
of the truth of your own desire inside of you
Mm-hmm.
that has has to manifest somehow, even if you'd say it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I do think that the way in which you are moving towards those things can be can be experienced as uh, like a song or as music or as a masterpiece. And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing. The thing about a masterpiece is that it's not rushed. It's not trying to finish itself. It's not trying to um, like reach the end of it of the music. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
it's focused intensely on doing the thing, creating perfection in the thing that's being done. And that focus and that desire for perfection in what's being done is the sweetest thing, like
Mm-hmm.
that a person can experience in life. Not
Yeah.
the end, not the end of the song. You're not. That's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
It's like,
Exactly. Cliche for that is the journey is the destination.
yeah. And
You heard that?
I don't think a masterpiece can be created from a mindset of trying to finish it and
No way.
like trying to get there. Like I imagine like uh who is it who created the David? Was it Michelangelo?
Created what,
Uh,
David?
the David.
Oh, I don't know.
Um, yeah, Michelangelo. It's a statue. I saw it in person. A lot of people look at it for the first time and they just begin to like they just start crying because they've never
Mm-hmm.
seen something as beautiful as it. It's a very large statue of David. David versus Goliath. It's one of the most beautiful pieces
Look
that's
up.
ever been created. And I think it took him multiple years to actually create this piece.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, any creator can attest to that. Like,
and I
you don't create for the end product, even though there always is an end product, but you just get lost in the motions of you get lost in the flow of creation itself.
Yeah, and I suspect like things like this are created from a state of mind that is focused, and not only focused, but it's the consciousness that they're engaging with. It's the state of consciousness they're engaging with is actually extremely pleasant, and it's actually very sweet. And it's something that I think few people will experience because um, there's a hyper fixation on achievement of the end product.
Yeah. If you can make your life into the creation, into the art, I think that's the essence that we're talking about here.
Yeah,
I
like
feel that.
cultivating this moment is that in every moment. The goal
Mm-hmm.
of life is that is this right here, this moment, the creation of this moment.
The art of living, man. Um. Okay. Yeah. It's dude. I'm pretty sure everyone has seen this statue.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty. I just used it as
Pretty
an
iconic.
example because most people will
Let's pull it up.
understand what it is. But I think there's art that exists, lots of art that exists like this.
Yeah. Any good art, it just takes you out. Like it takes you out of the moment, right? I mean, sorry, not out of the moment. It takes you out of your mind and into the moment, right? Talking about this one. Can you hear me still? I feel like
Yes,
the
I
audio
can.
cut. Oh, okay. There we go. You gotta love the Renaissance, you know, art of the groin area. They were special at that.
Yeah. And nowadays, look at the art we're creating now. It's not even close. It depends who you look at,
Yo,
but
that is crazy. That's stone. That is wild. When you like actually sit down, like you could just think, "Oh, that's a statue I'm seeing on the internet." This is a better picture. Let's see if I can get this one a bit bigger. Yeah, oop. That man created that without what? A hammer and a sickle?
yeah,
Like
look at
nothing.
the hand as well.
It's so
Just
detailed.
go back to the search and just type in hand at the end. And the whole piece
Wow.
is this detailed. It's just a good example.
Damn. Can I just get the picture? Which one would do just the picture?
Click on the one right
Mm,
on the right of it
on the
in the
right of
search
it?
results. Yeah,
Right here?
yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's the veins, man. How do you get that detail without power equipment? That's insanity. Yeah, you don't get that by not being in the moment. That's wild. Yeah, man. That was pretty good, except for the watermark. That's crazy.
Yeah, right.
I would cry too. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
to
man.
see it is to also like in a sense, I feel it's you're tuning into some of kind of like the state he was in is my
Exactly.
thought. Like
Mm-hmm.
many
I
people
think
haven't
any
ever
art does that.
experienced like that level. Yeah, I assume that making this was also it was arduous, but probably a very beautiful experience for Michelangelo. And it's
Mm,
probably the only way he was able to finish it over there. I think it was maybe 3 years, probably thousands of hours. And I would say the only way you can achieve something like that uh, is to live so in such a sweet place. Like you
amen.
have to really find the beauty of this presence.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, you can do anything. Like you could
Mm,
construct, given you have enough time in your life. That's the real limitation,
yeah,
is
man.
the time you have in life.
Very true. I think
But
that's the point of what we're supposed to do here. If there is a purpose, it's to create something, whatever it is, whether it's a sculpture or a song, book, but create something that outlasts us. Because, like you said, we have a very limited amount of time. But that statue outlives Michelangelo. So, if we can find some kind of art of living, yes, like find it in the midst of it, but also something that comes from it. There's something that comes to fruition out of that presence. I think that it's kind of what life's
yeah,
about,
it's a
man. I don't
result.
know.
I believe it's the result of his cultivation of artistry and his own consciousness to be
Yeah.
able to even facilitate that level of discipline and focus. He had to he had to be experiencing something
Mm-hmm.
semi-divine to care to, probably for like a week just work on a single like vein. Like that's probably would drive anyone
Mm.
mad if they had to if they were like forced to do that. They probably couldn't. I mean, maybe they
Yeah.
could, but it wouldn't be at this level.
It's wild too because I don't think anyone could make anything like that nowadays. They would have to use computer programming. But if to make that from scratch,
I'm sure there are people. It's just that one, they're probably not going to do it in the same way, and two,
yeah, different
um,
tools. Not
it
they're
won't
not
be
original.
appreciated as much because it's already been done. And like,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think the reason this is so amazing is because like no one was there are people that were doing this, but it was such a feat. I think today,
Mm.
like an equivalent would be like using the technology and tools we have today to create something as magnificent. And I don't even know what that would look like.
I don't know either, man. Yeah, then you get into the AI art realm, and it's like, yeah, it's throwing that all out the window. You can create Michelangelo with a few with a few words on a prompt.
I think
It's
it
strange.
would integrate AI, but it would be somehow it would somehow use it to enhance what a human's perspective is. Like there's
I
a
think,
place there's a
uh,
place for AI art, but it's not just prompt engineering. It's something more like um, finding this sort of balance between the human uh, creation and AI enhancement.
hmm
But I mean,
I'm.
AI art by itself is incredible too.
It really is. I almost feel the equivalent would be to make in today's world to make a movie about Michelangelo or David. I'm sorry, make a movie about David, like motion art, because that's so beautiful when you think about it. The art of movies, to be able to solidify that as a sort of sculpture. When you find a really good artistic movie or a really good artistic motion picture, that's like in a modern sense our style of visual art that transcends time in a way to capture time in motion picture like a sculpture. It's special something special, especially when we have AI video and anybody can create video. Like if you create video now, it'll be a sort of sculpture. Like you said, there's probably people doing it now, but it's not as cool because it's not
Oh
original.
yeah,
Well,
I think that there's we're evolving to a place where art is going to become more about transformation of consciousness than it is
yeah,
about simply visual and stimulus. Like I
yeah.
think true art, like the evolution of art, is going to somehow integrate. Um, like if I look at a piece, uh, the impact it has on my mind is going to be more relevant than the intricacy. And this has always been the case, but I think we're beginning to realize more like art isn't necessarily detail. It is one, a connection with the human, what makes a human being um, feel, what's connecting to the primordial aspect and beauty and creating art that, and this is my definition of art, it's impact on consciousness. And we're just going to get better and better and better at doing that. And I don't necessarily think that's what is happening in the masses right now, but I think that when things are all settling, like the real art is going to be that which is um, able to capture this quality. And I think it
Mm,
requires a lot of understanding of where we are as humanity and integrating all the lessons and philosophies and issues and creating something that strikes the heart of where people feel the most pain or the most
mm,
potential for love or connection. And it won't really matter if it's made, um, how it's made, but the effect is what will be like more important. And
great.
this is like I'm not saying anything new. This is what art has always done.
Yeah.
But I think that the evolution of art will just do that at higher and higher levels.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, man. Art. It's the art of living. Mm. It's good stuff. I don't even know what to say. It's good talk. I don't know. At a loss for words. I think that's what it's about, though. It's to find a sort of art of living, to create something, not for the end result. The end result will come, just for the act of creation.
I think
That's what
having
it's
the end
about.
result, yeah, it's like the end result in mind, but
In mind.
there's the desire for uh, I guess it's just the understanding that the end result isn't actually going to occur anywhere, but in the perfection of the present action.
Mm-hmm.
Like if that the deeper that's like there, the more the presence, the more. devotion in what I'm doing right now will increase. Like if that, as long as the end result increases the focus and the attentiveness in what's being done presently, then I don't see it as a problem. But the more it takes a person away from that, it's like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to create a masterpiece, or are you trying to escape what's the only thing that is, which is here?
Hmm. Yeah.
Which is, I think, where people start to have problems with goals. Like I hear often, like there's this people often will say you shouldn't have goals if you're on the spiritual path because it's just a you're just not focused on the now. And I'm like, that's really silly, actually. It's not, that's not how, like, whether you have goals or not, those goals will be part of this present experience. As long as you understand what goals are and how they can't actually, they're not actually in the future. They're just concepts that we're creating right now. It's like there's not an issue, there's not any conflict. You can't actually have a future event. It's impossible. There's never somewhere you could get. But
Yeah.
having a goal isn't automatically going to like shift reality and automatically make that not true. It's always that way. Having a
Hmm.
goal is a part of the present. It's a part of here. It's a part of now. It's like it's just a way to structure actions in an
Exactly.
ordered way.
Yeah.
It's like a masculine. It's almost like a part of a masculine element.
Mm,
And
yeah,
then
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's absolutely no problem with having goals. It's just the way we tend to relate to them is like we are trying to escape something here and now for
Yeah.
a preferable, better version of here and now that somehow exists out there, which is never out there. It's just a present thought or a concept that we've
Yep.
assigned this future label to. Same with past. It's just here, just happening.
Yeah. To do something just for the goal, to be completely 100% goal oriented, that's where it could get dangerous. Yeah.
But we're creators. Like I think of humans as it has the ability. Humans have the ability of uh, like some people say it's like we're given the capacity of God, or like we're made in the image of God as like these mini creation things. Like I do believe that we have that the faculty to create anything, but the
Hmm.
creation process starts with mental visualization of what we desire to create. Like nothing exists in reality that wasn't first a thought, and all those thoughts are is like that's the goal. Like that creation, that visualization, that's a goal, but it's not as much a future thing. It's just you're creating a structure to orient action to mold reality. Like
Hmm.
that's perfectly necessary
Yeah.
and enjoyable
Yeah,
thing
man.
to participate in, as long as it's not like, as long as you're not misunderstanding uh, how that works. Like you can't actually get anywhere. You can just mold here.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is the statue. Life is the statue. Like
We
just
are the
chiseling,
statue.
chiseling it. Like
Yep. We are the creator and the created at the same time. We're creating ourselves. Man. I mean, do you let me go to the bathroom again real quick. Third time. I'm staying hydrated today. One sec.
oh, dude.
All right, intermission. We're back. Good to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask or say something on the point of we are all creators, right? We are all creators and the created at the same time. Um, and we can do whatever we want, right? Do what thou wilt. Again,
You can do
another
whatever
Alistair
you
Crowley.
can do whatever you have awareness to do,
I think whatever
you've
is
been
in,
exposed to.
yeah, like we technically can try to do whatever we want, but there is a certain dharma that we all have. Michelangelo wasn't meant to be like Michael Jordan. He was meant to be Michelangelo, and Michael Jordan was meant to be Michael Jordan. So it's interesting. We do
See,
have
I,
the
I,
free
I have
will.
a, I have my qualms with fate. Like,
So what do you mean?
same with like, so people will say destiny is, where where we have to go, or there are certain things we have to experience. Um, then again, I question the epistemology of that. Like, how do you know that?
How
Like,
do I know?
why is that the case?
I
Why
don't
is
know. I just know. It's
why
hard
is
to
it
explain.
like I think there's karma. Yeah, I think there's three types of karma.
Yeah.
There's karma that is past actions that must manifest, or I phrase it this way: actions taken in the past that must bear fruit. So if you plant a seed in fertile ground, it's going to sprout. And we've been
Mm,
doing that our entire lives. And so
yeah.
those things will manifest. There are causes to those things. Then there is present karma, which is the karma we are creating right now, which is involves our will. So we um, let me rephrase it. We have past actions that have to bear fruit, and this is things that haven't yet fully manifested. Then there are things that are happening in this exact instant. Like there's like the reality I'm experiencing now is the fruit of all the actions, all the things, other actions from other people. Is all everything that's happening is the fruit. Right now is the fruit of everything, all the karma that has happened in the past. And then the third type of karma is what we are putting in the ground now, what we are planting now. So the first two types of karma we can't control. So we can't control what has yet to arise. Like there's somehow this store, there's like information stored somewhere somehow of things that must like manifest like in this moment. And things that are coming up in this moment are dictated by whatever that information is. Um, like say a meteor comes through my ceiling. Like that would happen because it was in the trajectory and it was, you know, that information was like
Mm,
it's going to happen, like if it did. But then there's this is where I call them a qualm with favorites. You have the ability to take the seeds, fruit, you can eat it, you can throw it away, you can do whatever you want with that, and you can plant new seeds, and you can even through your actions influence um, unarisen karma in ways as well. So there's some influence we have on the like sort of the like if I killed someone or I planted a seed like that, there's going to be an effect of it. But given like the actions I'm taking now, I can in a way uh almost like protect myself from the full brunt of that. But
mm,
I can't change that what I had set in motion.
yeah.
Like it's almost like I can shoot an arrow straight up in the air and it must come down. It has to. But I can create a shelter so that when it does come down, it doesn't kill me. But
Hmm.
I can't stop the arrow. Like I can't affect that.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you. It's a good metaphor.
So in that
Mm,
sense, fate can be manipulated through present action. But what has already been set in motion can't be changed. These things, like we hear all about acceptance. Like
that's
so
karma.
so many people are like, you must accept life, you must accept what's happened. You just that's all about acceptance. Everyone's accepted, accepted, accepted. I think you can only accept two things: what's happening now and what has yet to manifest, the seeds that are planted already. You have to accept those things, but you do not have to accept um, the way in which you are engaging with the rising fruit. That's where you have control. And in fact, I adopt more of a stance, like a sort of like a I know warrior stance against like you can have this effect that you can change things, you can influence things, and in fact, it's like you're battling with you can battle with it, and you can win against uh, what's here, but you have to know where you can fight.
Hmm.
And so it's not. I'm not a fan of acceptance in your will. Like you can uh, you can change your reality, and if you think you can't, then that's your karma. That's your limitation that you've created for yourself. And you can decide to not have uh, control over your life, um, And that would be a type of seed that has sprouted in you. And it would limit you in ways that I would say would be like unhelpful to someone who wants to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Like
So it's like we do have control. We have control in the way to direct the trajectory based upon our previous actions. So we can kind of mitigate the suffering, the karma of the past based upon how we decide to work with that now. So it's like we do have control, but we don't have 100% control. It's kind of both. It's like we're at the whim of our past karma, but if you completely take that predeterministic point of view, then yeah, you're really going to be at the whim of your past karma and you're not going to have any control, but you do have some semblance of control. I think it's a blend, like there is a blend of like fate and free will. It's neither camp is true. I think it's both. You kind of have to accept your previous things that you sowed. You have to reap them, but you don't have to reap them necessarily in a way of being the victim. And I think that's the big difference is that you don't sow yourself as the victim going on. You either build the house over the arrow or not. And I think that's the essence of good karma or sattvic living. And not building karma at all
yeah,
is how
like
we decide to do.
it's true that you can have such a karma where you believe you can't do anything. And there are certain truths that become true because you believe them. Like
Yeah.
if you believe you can't
Getting back into
accomplish,
beliefs.
if you believe you can't affect change, your ability to change becomes so constricted based on what has happened to you that it's as if it's true. And you create the truth of that through
Hmm.
subscribing to it. Alternatively, you can subscribe to uh, power and the ability to change. And people who accept these two different approaches will have two different types of outcomes. So it's not even that uh, karma is you're bound to karma, but you are somewhat bound to it. Like it's it's really the position you're taking with what's happening. Like
Yeah.
and this is also influenced by karma too. Like you might have grown up in certain situations where this is reinforced into you. So it's
Mm.
like it's fortunate to come to the understanding that these truths become true because you decide that they're true. I've thought about this like a lot. Like there's an effect of believing that you have will, and there's an effect of believing you don't have will. And those two beliefs, they lead to different outcomes. And you have to be careful with what you believe because that will begin to influence how limited or free you are and what's what you can do with your life. So people who are subscribed to fate, they're naturally and necessarily creating a limitation for themselves
Yeah.
versus a person who's like, I'm able to control the fate, or I'm able to control my fate. Like that
Mm.
person will be taking much different types of actions, and they'll be planting much different types of seeds
Yeah.
versus seeing the seeds that come up and being like, oh, well, that's how it is. So I'm just gonna,
Mm.
everything's meant to be like everything's like everything that happens to me, is supposed to happen to me.
Hmm.
Like, well, like, yes, but also the way that you are interpreting and interpolating what's happening to you and reacting to it is creating what will have to happen to you in the future too.
Exactly. Yeah. What's supposed to happen to you in the future based upon fate is also based upon the actions that you take now. That's the thing. It's a blend. It's the dance, man. It's also a dance in that aspect as well. It's quite interesting. Yeah, man. Karma and dharma. That's it right there. Yeah. Hmm. It's like we can do whatever we want, but you shouldn't. You shouldn't. And you can be completely at the whim of your environment
Mhm.
and
And
be a victim, but you
there's
shouldn't.
also that creative aspect too. Like you say we can do whatever we want. It's still limited somewhat. Like most of the thoughts that arise are because of like past experience. Like I can think a thought, but typically that thought is something that has come to me. Like I can think of thought, but I can't decide the thought that comes. Sort of like
Yeah.
I think sometimes Sam Harris gets into this, like he's a proponent or he's antagonistic towards free will, or he's sort of like there's no free will and you can't choose because any thought that you think is not a thought that you thunk, it's a thought that came to you.
Is that a word,
Like
thunk?
I don't know, I just
It
made
is
it.
now.
Like like anything that's like arising is like sort of like a spontaneous arising. But
Yeah.
I do think that there's that creative element in each person that if it's respected can develop like intentionality. Like it can in a
Mm.
sense transcend what you know. Like you can create you there's a
Yeah.
creation like
Yep.
of like ingenious solutions to things that no one's ever thought of,
Yeah.
including yourself, that you didn't read in a book, but is purely a result of awareness, like connecting with something so fully
Mm.
and also giving itself full permission to act spontaneously. And that to me is like
That's alignment.
the quality of will. Like
Yeah.
that's novelty. And to say that is predetermined would be really hard to justify
And
because
that's quite shallow.
where does it come from? Where is it arising from?
Exactly. Yeah, man. Yeah, strange visualization that I had during that. Yeah, so in that way we transcend the depending arising. That Sam Harris point of view. If you can align in the very eloquent way that you explained, it transcends karma in that way, the cause and effect, and creates this new quantum
It's totally
arising.
spontaneous.
Yeah.
And in a way you could say it's not even really something you're deciding, but it is something that is a power. This is the
Mm.
power of one's will. Like it's to create uh like I may not be able to select the intentions that are arising, or sorry, I may not be able to, before the intentions arise, pick the intentions that are coming to me, but
Mm.
I can select the intention um, and focus on that. And from that, there's this sort of creative thing that happens that is like it's like it is like I don't like using quantum, but it is something like it's happening instantly. Um, yeah,
Spontaneous arising. Yeah, man.
so it's not
Now,
predetermined. It's really what I'm trying to say. It's
and ultimately, that spontaneous arising, you would say, leads one to, I think we described this before, a true enjoyment of the experience, right? Like if you function at that wavelength, you're probably going to enjoy your experience in the creation of it, in the spontaneous creation of the experience, right? If you could generalize it, that's probably what it's all about, right? For everyone in their own spontaneous creation, you're going to be able to enjoy this life
but
as an
you'll
art
be
form.
engaged at a level that is not predictable, and that itself is interesting, and that itself is a much more
Yeah.
interesting place to act out of than
Mm.
to act out of like patterns and predetermined
Yeah.
conditions.
Novelty.
And I would even say like most people do act from predetermined patterns. Like most people will learn something and like try to like follow a structure to like get something done. But I think that's a I don't want to say an insult to their own capacities, but it undermines what they have available to them. Like the spark of divinity or the spark of God that
Mm.
they have in them will be much more effective at um, at accomplishing what they desire in a masterful way from original place
Yeah.
than like just trying to follow the box of what they know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as consciousness becomes more refined, the more things it's able to do spontaneously. Like um, I think one of the metrics of a person's awareness is to be able to enter a new domain. or a new field or a new thing, and to from the very beginning start making like discoveries or start performing at a level that is in a sense much higher than someone who is like operating from um I don't want to like kind of like a dogmatic, like I have to like follow this step and this step and
Yep.
this step and this step. Like someone
Yep.
like Da Vinci, like I would consider able to do this. Like if you put him in a field, a new field, he's going to outperform in a short period of time those who've been studying it for years and years and years. Um, and that's because he's not approaching it from um, a premeditative way. He's using his awareness and like locking into what is actually happening, and he has a goal, and that's he's using like the same intelligence that we were using as children to learn
Yep.
how to speak. We were like, how do children learn to speak and think so rapidly? Um, and it's because their mind is coming from that sort of spontaneous, creative, original place.
Mm.
I I know it's the source of genius. I know it's the source of like when we see a masterpiece, like how did they do that? In the same way you did as a child learning to think from nothing.
Yeah.
It's just once you learn to think and once you learned to act, you then started to think those were the like those are now the ways to learn. Like people learn through thinking, people learn through actions, people learn through like taking in information, thinking about it, and then trying to like emulate versus like um, seeing what it is that's in front of them where they want to be and just like spontaneously like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm.
it's hard to explain it, but
That's true.
it's something like that.
Yeah, man. It's finding a sense of play in the creation without any sort of
Yeah, it
idea.
is a play. It is fun.
Yeah, right? Spontaneous play, and you're not worrying about trying to get here or there. Yeah, beautiful example is children. Just so in the midst of whatever they're doing, coloring a picture, playing on the playground. Yeah, unless you become like children, then you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven, as Jesus said. And it's true, man. I feel that. It is something about that, regaining our childhood, but not like childish to become childlike, you know? Not with a
Yeah,
sort of naivety. It's a very
I
like
think I think
pureness.
it's a good way to think. Um, I think people do get wrapped up in like, oh, I should be like a child, and then they think about children, and then they'll try to like be like childlike, and I'm just like,
No, that's
it's
childish.
not, it's not that it's children. It's not that it's the element is. It's not about kids. It's not about like babies. It's
No,
about what's
it's like
already
that
inherent.
spirit.
It's
Yeah.
inherent. It's inherent in
Mm,
everything. It's already there. Children just don't have as much of a filtering on top of it. It's not they're not as
yeah.
superficial. There's not as many superficial structures,
Mhm.
but it's in children. It's in everybody,
Yeah, man.
um, and adults who understand that are our children, and children who understand that are like those adults.
Mm,
It's it's just an element that isn't like it's inherent in the consciousness.
yeah, man. It's a very
Yeah.
sanctified essence of who we are. Really is who we are. It's very pure, unfiltered, undistorted, no baggage.
Like I said, I remember hearing once like there's certain groups and people will say like we should be childlike, and then they say okay let's create playtime like from like 8 to like 12 p.m. like or
Oh
like
no.
the structure like a playtime, and they're like all
Uh-huh.
right time to play, and it's like I'm just like no
No.
it's a constant it's constant it's
Constant play.
everything is potentially play, everything is potentially that engaging, washing your clothes, doing your work, engaging in conversation.
Yeah.
Um, like children aren't structuring their play like this, uh, but funnily enough, you can train that in a structured way. But it's uh, and I would say most adults might have to because there's not a reference point. But
Mm.
ultimately, it's just like seeing that in everything. And then that's when life starts to become like a game. Like it's like everything that's being done is potentially a portal to that that place. So
Amen. Well said, man. Yeah, man. Fuck. That's good. I could keep going. I don't know, but I think that's a good note to wrap it up at. Um, yeah, life becomes less serious, right? Less
or
serious.
it becomes more serious.
Mm, also, I don't know. I don't think it's more serious. Less serious for me.
I think it's serious. It can become seriously engaging.
Say that again?
Like I think it can be like seriously an engaging thing. Like
Yeah, in that way. I meant like less serious and because the seriosity, the seriousness just shifts.
I think it's a serious loss to lose that. And I think that sometimes it's a devotion to it can look like play, but inside the person is very
That's what it
serious
is.
about it, like
That's what it is.
Michelangelo or whatever. I'm sure that their devotion to that was probably looked pretty serious,
Yeah.
or maybe it looked like play, but basically the internal thing, it's like um, I think it's a serious loss of life. And I think it's like if you put someone's life who's or if I compared my life versus my life in this state versus my life like in this sort of like operating out of like rules and following thinking as the way to go, like the difference is serious. Like the loss is serious, not just for myself, but for the world. And I mean serious in the sense like what's being lost is something that you would actually otherwise really care about. And to lose that or to not experience that is it's like the difference between living life and not living life. Uh, like when we're going to die or when we experience near-death experience, that's typically serious. People typically integrate that as serious, or it's a serious sort of confrontation. And I'm saying that's actually true all the time. That's what's lost all the time. And when that's seen, it you may become a very serious person, but it's not in the sense of like you become more constricted, but you just are aware of what's lost. And I think a lot of people, I don't want to say are fortunately not aware of that, but I will say that because if they were aware of that, they might begin to take each action a lot more with a lot more attention because the knowledge of what's lost is there. But many people will never even know what's lost because that's not something that's really um,
Taken serious.
the difference between their life like where they could be versus where they will be if they are not in touch with that element is if they could see it, it would be I would argue would be astonishing and very um, I would say very hard to see, and they may become it may be like a confrontation with like what have I missed? Like I missed this,
Mm,
like what I could have created with this life. It's and most people will never have that confrontation. And it's hard to see like versus the person they could be. And I don't believe in like comparison. Like it's not about always making, comparing with what you could be, but it's knowing that what is available is powerful and the effect that you could have on the world and yourself. Like if people just touch that, I think it would transform. Like
oh yeah.
it would
Mm-hmm.
transform. Um, but
Yeah.
the most serious people are, I feel, those who touch that and see like, wow, this is what a masterpiece could be. This is what a masterpiece feels like. Um,
They become the
and
master.
and
Yeah.
to know that. versus living your life just sort of like on
Mm-hmm.
autopilot is it's as serious a loss as um, seeing a young like see but like seeing someone throw their life away or someone who potentially it's as serious as death, but death isn't that serious if you don't want to think of it that way. But I would say it's just like it's like that. If you think death is serious, then this is serious. If you don't think death is serious, and at a certain stage it isn't, because you could say we're all eternal beings. But I think a person who sees it becomes serious, but also the fulfillment they experience, the joy they experience, leads them to be light, leads them to go to sleep at night without regret, leads them to die without regret, to die with a heart filled with potential, to live a life not having seen the possibility of what that element inside would lead to is, I think, a serious loss.
Damn. Mic drop. Yeah, man. Yeah. It's just the um
I want to see
one.
that beauty in everybody. I want to see it in myself
Amen.
from a place of just knowing that this here, this creation, this whatever we have, um,
It's all we have.
can be so beautiful.
Can be. It can be, that's for sure. There's a lot more potential for the beauty. There always
And
is.
that potential never exists somewhere else, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
never somewhere else.
Mm. That's the irony. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's all I have to say on that.
That's a lot. That's good, man. That's good stuff. Yeah, it's just that the on the note of seriousness, it's that the seriousness just shifts on what we take serious. The
I
human
think
play.
people
Mm-hmm.
in their hearts, there's some emblem, there is a seriousness in everybody, but it's repressed. And it typically will come out at the time of death. It will
Mm-hmm.
typically come out when they lose something that's inherently valuable to them. But their minds tend to look away from those things because it's intense.
Yeah.
When someone
It's
loses a loved
unknown.
one, when your life is threatened, when you get a terminal illness, that's when you
Yeah.
touch base with the seriousness inside of the position we're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
Exactly.
seriousness then becomes expressed. And I think it can be really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like it can transform a person uh, from being so caught up in these little petty little concerns, and they become seriously devoted to what their heart is asking them, and it becomes this very sincere seriousness, not this like somber, like heavy, like constricted, but this like wow, like I have this one chance here
Yeah.
to
Exactly, man.
do something amazing, like to really
Live.
enjoy, not just for others, but for my own experience of consciousness, to see the distinction between to that and like say a person before they confronted that
Oh
say
yeah.
terminal illness. It's like that's when someone really understands like, seriousness
Hmm.
towards life. And until then, life is sort of just like lackadaisical. Like
Yeah.
I could do whatever I want. It doesn't really matter because there's not
Yeah.
an awareness of what the potential is. Um, and that's not something I think someone should hold over themselves as a way to like self-development. Sometimes people are always trying to improve and they actually forget to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm,
Mm-hmm.
I'm, I'm inverting the seriousness of that. It's inverted to living here fully
Mm-hmm.
and not as this like, and that's really developing. That's really developing.
Yeah.
And I would argue they develop in a way that's more congruent, less about an insecurity and more about a security like in themselves. Because life is like it's joyful, it's blissful, it can be. Doesn't it's not it's as serious uh as it gets
Mm.
without it being a burden.
Yeah. That's the shift. It goes from a burden to actually beautiful. That's the shift in seriousness and what we take serious. You know how when you say a word like in repetition, it starts to become strange in your head? That just happened for me with serious. Yeah,
Another
it's
word I
true
could
though.
replace it with is sincerity. I
Yeah,
think that might be a little
I
more
think that's
close
better. Mm-hmm.
because the connotations of serious aren't good.
It's like
It's something.
serious. Yeah, but sincere. Yeah, sincerity in one's actions, in one's lifestyle, in their whole life,
Be
how they treat
extremely
others.
sincere is to
Yeah,
be uh, it's something like serious, but it's I think it's a little bit closer to what I'm
mm-hmm.
getting at. Like, and it might appear as someone who's like super focused, and they might seem like very like, oh, that person's like, you know, they're not even enjoying themselves, but they're so involved in something that they're experiencing such a level of devotion that their mind is like absorbed. They're in a state of samadhi. They're in a state of joy or of peace.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's rare. True sincerity is very rare, but it's there. It's still there within all of us. We all have the
it's
aptitude
there.
and
It's inside.
capacity. Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, it doesn't require death knocking at the door to come out. I don't think
No,
that's an
hope.
ideal catalyst, but it might be necessary.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. You gotta die before you die, as they say. Yeah, man.
yeah, cool, man. Good
Hmm.
talk.
Really good talk. You said some good stuff today, man. I was just sitting back and listening. Um, I don't even know what to say. I guess we can just wrap it up at that. Sincerity. Keep on doing your thing, man. You're on the right path, that's for sure. So keep on keeping on. That's it. Keep on keeping on.
Thanks, brother.
Let's keep on keeping on. Me and you will keep on keeping on. But still, whatever you're doing, whatever practice, whatever you're doing in your life, keep on doing your thing because you know how to explain things in a way that I've never really heard people explain. You know, you just know how to get to the depth of an idea and really extrapolate upon a word. Like, you know, like we take words, we take theses in forms of words, I find. And you take that word and really know how to examine what that means in its purest form. And I think that's a skill of yours. So, yeah, I don't know what you want to do with that, but keep on keeping
We'll,
on.
we'll see where it goes. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.